Welcome, all devotees. Did I pray? Yeah, we're now being recorded. I happened to look again, as I do before this class, see if any more have registered, and there was a few more. So amazingly, there's 130 people have registered, but I'm sure we're not going to get 130 people come online all at the same time. I think a lot of them are listening to the recordings, so that's an option for many. But welcome. I'm going to try something a little bit different today in the way we go about things. Normally, we asked if anyone would like to read, and we asked that you put your hand up for reading. I'm sure all of you are aware of how to do that on Zoom. But at the moment, because the purports are quite lengthy, generally we're only reading one verse. This has happened the last Tuesday and Wednesday. So what we do is we're just asked for someone wants to read, and you can just unmute and read. There's no need to put your hand up. Okay? So just make an official announcement as such that if you wish to ask a question or make a comment, you can just unmute and make yourself known, or you can put in the chat, or you can put your hand up. So you've got three options: unmute and speak away, or you can put it in the chat, or you can put your hand up, and hopefully I will see your hand, or perhaps someone could tell me there's a hand up. Okay? So, Hare Krishna, here we go. And this is open session number 11. All right. And for those of you who have Bhagavad Gita, today we're continuing with chapter 4, which is called Transcendental Knowledge. And also, it's known as Jnana Prapti Upaya Yoga. That basically means that transcendental knowledge that let me just see who's coming in here. Means this is the attainment of transcendental knowledge through the performance of devotional acts. Okay, so we're on chapter 4, text 10. All right, now I'm just going to share my screen. So for those of you who don't have Bhagavad Gita, you can see it there on your phone or your gadget or whatever you have on your laptop, whatever it may be. And before we begin, let's offer some prayers to Srila Prabhupada. It's his Bhagavad Gita as it is that we are reading from. So let's give all respects to him. See, many devotees are coming in now. Okay. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamti Namane Namaste Sarasati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Nivasesha Sunyavari Pashtatara Sadhanine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Okay, just because there was a big rush of people running in the door just now, so many people just joined us. So just made a little change. If you'd like to ask a question, you can put your hand up, or you can put in the mute. You can put in the chat as usual, or you can unmute and speak away. Normally, we ask for hands for reading, but being so, we're only reading one verse and one purport at the moment. So, okay, I hope everyone's clear on that. So, Madhu Mongol, you have your hand up, but I think it's because you want to read. Or did you have a question?
No, I wanted to read.
Okay, so, okay, everyone's ready? Okay, let's chant.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, Mother Mangapu, you can read. Thank you.
Vita Raga Baya Krodha Manmayo Mam Upashrita Bahavo jana tapasa uttamad bhavam agata. Being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me, and thinking and taking refuge in me, many persons in this past become purified by knowledge of me, and thus they will attain transcendental love for me.
Okay, this purpose a couple of pages, so let's all listen as carefully as we can. Hare Krishna. Go ahead, Madam Wong. And again, any questions that come, please, you're welcome to ask or anything to share as well. I know some devotees is what they do is while we're reading, they have a notepad and any questions come up, then they write it down as we're hearing, or any discussion points or any reflections. So you can do that if you wish as well. Okay, I won't disturb you anymore, Mother Mongol Puru. What I can do, Mother Mongol Puru, is while you're reading, I can let people in. Okay? So
Yeah.
just concentrate on the reading.
As described above, it is very difficult for a person who is too materially affected to understand the personal nature of the Supreme Absolute Truth. Generally, people who are attached to the bodily conception of life are so absorbed in the material that it's almost impossible for them to understand how the Supreme can be a person. Such materialists cannot even imagine that there is a transcendental body which is imperishable, full of knowledge, and eternally blissful. In the materialistic conception, the body is perishable, full of ignorance, and completely miserable. Therefore, people in general keep the same body idea in the mind when they are informed of the personal form of the Lord. For such materialistic men, the form of the gigantic material manifestation is supreme. Consequently, they consider the Supreme to be impersonal. And because they are too materially absorbed, the conception of retaining the personality after liberation from material frightens them. When they are informed that the spiritual life is also individual and personal, they become afraid of becoming persons again, and so they naturally prefer a kind of merging to the impersonal voids in the impersonal void. Generally, they compare the living entity to the bubble of the ocean, which merge into the ocean. That is the highest perfection of spiritual existence attainable without individual personality. This is a kind of fearful stage of life, devoid of perfect knowledge of spiritual existence. Furthermore, there are many persons who cannot understand the spiritual at existence at all, being embarrassed by so many by being embarrassed by so many theories and by contradiction of variable types of philosophical speculation. They become disgusted or angry and foolish, concluded that there is no supreme cause and that everything is ultimately void. Such people are in a diseased condition of life. Some people are too materially attached and therefore do not give attention to spiritual life. And some of them want to merge into the supreme spiritual cause. And some of them disbelieve in everything, being angry at all sorts of spiritual speculation out of the hopelessness. This last class of men take to the shelter of some kind of intoxication, and their effective hallucination are sometimes accepted as a spiritual vision. One has to get rid of all these stages of attachment to the material world, negligence of spiritual life, fear of spiritual personal identity, and the conception of void that arise from frustration in life. The to get free from these three stages of the material conception of life, one has to take shelter. One has to take complete shelter of the Lord, guided by the bona fide spiritual master and followed by by the disciples and regulative principles of devotional life. The last stage of the devotional life is called Bhav, or transcendental love of God. According to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.4.15.16, the science of devotional service Should I read also the Sanskrit?
If you want, it's a nice verse. It's nice to hear the Sanskrit. Do your best.
Tato narta nivriti sha'at tato nishta ruchi Tata
Ah,
Shakti Tato Bhava Tata Prema Biyandam Kanti Shada
Ganam
Tada
Ayam Maha
Kayana
Pradu
Pradu
Pramaha.
Karama. In the beginning, one must have a preliminary desire to self-realization. This will bring one to the stage of trying to associate with persons who are spiritually elevated. In the next stage, one becomes initiated by an elevated spiritual master, and under his instruction, the neophyte devotee begins the process of devotional service. By execution of devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master, one becomes free from all material attachments, attains steadiness in self-realization, and acquires a state of for hearing about the absolute personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. This taste leads one further forward to the attachment for Krishna consciousness, which is matured in bhav, or the preliminary stage of transcendental love of God. Real love for God is called prema, the highest perfectional stage of life. In the prema stage, there is a constant engagement in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So, by the slow process of devotional service, under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, one can attain the highest stage, being freed from all material attachments, from the fearfulness of one individual spiritual personality, and from the frustration that results in philosophy, in the void philosophy. Then one can ultimately attain to the absolute, to the above of the Supreme Lord.
Hare Krishna, thank you. So quite a lot in this purport. If there's any particular questions or comments, you're quite welcome to ask. But one thing just coming to mind at the beginning of the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that such materialists cannot even imagine that there's a transcendental body which is imperishable, full of knowledge and eternal. And this verse, what is explaining being free from attachment, fear, and anger? This gives us an understanding how persons who are leading a gross materialistic life, in other words, someone who's leading an atheistic type of life, that's why the concept of the Supreme is completely beyond their comprehension. And because it's beyond their comprehension, then they choose not to, or they choose to not to believe. Yeah. So what this means is that there's a way of living one's life by which the Supreme becomes revealed. That's why this verse here says being free from fear, anger, from attachment, fear, and anger. And that's why Prabhupada, at the end of the purport, he gives a krama, or he gives a systematic different steps or different elevations that one goes through in Krishna consciousness, whereby gradually the Supreme Lord is revealed. Mother Mangalpu, if you could let people in, there's a few people knocking on the door. Hare Krishna. Because I'm sure many of you have heard or you spoke to, because I presume everyone here has some type of faith in the Supreme or Krishna. I'm sure you want to be here if that was the case. But I'm sure we've heard different atheistic arguments and met different atheistic people. Everyone, let me just do some muting. So I'm just doing some muting. Please don't mind, you may be unmuted. Yeah, sometimes when someone's unmuted and I go and I hear noise, then I mute them suddenly. So please don't mind if you find yourself suddenly muted. That's because there's noises coming through. So that's why we can meet atheistic persons and they have they're quite convinced that the Lord doesn't exist. Yeah. But they won't take to a way of life, or sometimes they make out as being very sincere in wanting to understand God, But if you ask them to actually partake in a way of life, and especially if you might ask them to follow regulative principles, then unless they're really sincere, most of them are not going to want to. Now the peculiar thing is that we're following a krama, we're following a path by which the Supreme Lord becomes revealed. But they want it the other way around. They are not going to follow anything unless God appears before them and says, hello. God is not so cheap. So there has to be some sacrifice. Yeah. So that's one thing that came to mind in the beginning. At the beginning of this Prabhupada says, such materialists cannot even imagine that there is a transcendental body which is imperishable, full of knowledge, and eternally blissful. So they're in a materialistic concept of life. That's why they cannot comprehend. Anyway, any other questions on that or reflections or anything else? And again, what we're doing a little bit different today. If you'd like to make a comment, ask a question, you've got an extra choice today of how you do that. You can put your hand up, and hopefully I'll see your hand waving. You can put your hand up, or you can put in the chat, or you can just unmute and shout away. Hare Krishna. So any reflections from anybody else? I'm reading. Nitai Mata, you have your hand up. Wow, it works. Great. Hare Krishna.
You were speaking about regulatory principles, but sometimes I wonder, even somebody following regulatory principles, why they find difficult to have only prasadam. Even even as devotees, like I'm talking to myself, I'm trying my best actually. Why is that? Even after knowing that only we will have prasadam only, why are we failing in that?
Yeah, I think let's see. I think everyone's aware in Krishna consciousness. We follow at some point. We follow some what's known as the regulatory principles, and one of the instructions. And one of the instructions.
For me, it is not very clear. It's very fast.
We're getting it. But one of the instructions that we follow is that devotees of the Lord is we only eat food which is offered to Krishna. But sometimes we may, or you may see, sometimes we may fall short of this. So why is that? So I should offer that question out. There's something I have in mind. I could answer that, but let's have perhaps one or two can answer Nitai Mata's question.
Can I say something?
You can say something. Yes, please.
So, I know I like a lot sweets, and I understand one thing that is very, very hard. Like Maya, you are like battling with the whole, let's say, reality, with the whole Maya. And Maya has the best tricks because we'll know exactly when and where is your soft spot. So even if we know and we heard so many instructions, sometimes we become comfortable and we say, oh, we might make a mistake today. It's not a big mistake. And you might try and you might eat here and there. But if you really see the reality that actually everything you do, you need to do to be favorable for Krishna, then you will not do it anymore.
Yes, thank you, Madhumangopu. Basically, what you're saying it was what I was thinking as well, is that of the tongue is the most voracious and very difficult to control. And sometimes we fail to control as senses. Sometimes, might be often, yeah. So sometimes we may. I have to admit. Excuse me, I have to make a confession as a brahmachari. Sometimes I buy things and I forgot to offer it to Krishna. I just edit. And then as I'm eating, oh my God, I didn't even offer it to Krishna. Especially it happens when I'm maybe traveling, when I'm on the road, when I'm not leading a regulated life for one reason or another, I'm traveling and it's not my usual situation. And then, you buy something and you're hungry and just open a packet and you eat it.
Prabhu, that is not the point. No, when you are traveling, that's a different point. I'm saying sometimes even devotees, like they know, there was a conversation, somebody was saying to me, it's okay, when you eat, we offer. I said, don't be a Muslim.
When you
They don't think the importance that Lord has to have a plate, like we put in the plate. Lord is not a person, although we know
Lord is a person.
person.
Yeah, you gotta. Sometimes you have to give. You have to give space to each other. Sometimes you're going to see us or devotees not come up to the topmost standard. Let's give them a bit of space. Be a bit compassionate upon them. They may.
No, Prabhu, I'm asking, why is that? Why it is getting clear?
Because I'm saying because the senses are very difficult to control. It's basically the bottom line.
Yes, we are
And the
conditioned.
tongue is like a snake. Sorry.
Yeah, we are conditioned. That is true. But is it?
Yeah, but I've got a couple of points that I work with.
Yeah.
It's like, say, I love sweets. So then when I am at the temple, I try and get Mangalasti sweet or daily sweet or something like that, and I munch on it. Then my desire to have any sweets apart from prasad is gone.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, I've got another thing. When I go shopping to Kingsbury, every other shop is food. Your senses are all over the place. So make sure you are well satisfied eating prasad before you go out shopping. Then your desires are under control. You're not hungry, so you don't even think about wanting to eat this, buy that. So you have to work with your body and your senses, how you can control them.
It sounds like words of wisdom. Thank you, Mother Chandravali.
My mind now. Sorry, please forgive me. I think it's all about surrendering.
Yeah. Can I ask? Is there any? Yeah, it's true. Is there any questions more in line with the purple or the topic? I mean, it's in line definitely because we're following a path, so it's very relevant.
Yeah, I wanted to ask something.
Please go on. Yeah.
Why does Srila Prabhupada always says this process is a science? What does he mean by speaking? Devotional service is a science.
Yeah. Well, it's actually Prabhupada's brilliance. It's actually Prabhupada's genius, because people in today's world, they're very much enamored by science. So that word is like a catchword. So Prabhupada, when he was writing his books, this was when he was beginning to write his books, this was in the 40s and 50s. So science was very much becoming very prominent. And what happened, a lot of people even now have more faith in science than they do in the principles of Bhagavad Gita or in religious scriptures. That's why, as you mentioned, some people are atheistic. They have more, for them, it has to be a science before they believe anything. Science means that there's a hypothesis, you bring up something which may be true, and then you do an experiment. And once you do the experiment, then you get proof of the hypothesis. So this is Prabhupada's genius, if you think about it, like this book. And actually, it was the first book I read. It was The Science of Self-Realization. So the two words don't really go together. Science is like atheistic, it can be. And self-realization is like a spiritual practice. So to put the two together, that's Prabhupada's genius. It's the science of self-realization. And if you look at the practice of bhakti, it is that. Okay, so the hypothesis is that God exists. All right, so here's the experiment. So you make these adjustments in your life. You take up these principles. You cultivate a mood of humility. You bow down, mister. You bow down and admit your insignificance. And yeah. And in that way, that's why Prabhupada at the end of here, he gives these verses. So that's why Prabhupada uses it. It's for preaching, the science of devotional service, because it is as you apply yourself to it, then you get the result. If you try and cut corners, then you won't get the result. It's like the science. I remember when I was at school, we were having our science class, and of course, as young kids, we were just mucking around, and we wasn't following what the chemistry teacher told us to do. We was just throwing anything in the test tube, and then bang, the test tube exploded. And the science teacher.
Can I add something here? Sorry,
Yeah,
Mother
I
Prabhu.
think Dan and Jai, did you say something? Then we're bringing open up. Perhaps you didn't.
No, Prabhu, I'm good.
Okay, Madhu Mangupu. So that answered the question, everybody? Or anything
Yes,
else?
yes.
So that's Prabhupada's genius.
Yeah, and yeah. It's it is a science when you really
Science. Yeah.
looking into it. It is a science of how one process goes to another process to another process. You know, like in the end of the purport, it's also telling you how once you
There's 9 stages. There's 9
faith,
stages.
yes. So it's a process. So it's scientific process.
Yeah. But it's quite subtle science. Because one for more thing, it's quite a subtle science because it means if you are in the wrong state of consciousness, you have the wrong mental disposition. If you're proud or you're challenging, then you're not going to get the result. It demands the development of humility. That's part of the science of realizing God. Mata, you want?
Do you think it is just like following a recipe? We have to follow the process.
Yeah.
Following a recipe.
Yeah.
But it has to be.
Yeah, one more thing, Mother. I'll just a good example because I've done quite a bit of cooking in my devotional life, and sometimes when when I cook a cake and it doesn't come out right, then I blame the recipe book. But it's not. It's something I've done wrong, but I'm not humble enough to admit it. Yes, Madhu Mangopu. And then we have something from Gadami and Nahaba. Yes, Madhu.
There are many scientists on the planet, and there are many following, let's say, so-called science and recipes, but none of them have very much success because they are not authorized. So we see that Srila Prabhupada came with this Krishna consciousness science, but he was authorized. So then it is working.
Well, yeah, well, that's part of the science, that it's not a manufactured process of a religion. It's coming from Krishna himself. So that's part of the science. Yeah, I see a beautiful picture of Radha Shyamasundari here from Hungary. And the name Garimam Dhab. You had a question there? Garimamanab or?
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mother. Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Please, yes.
I just want to say, I'm studying science,
Okay. Yeah.
So I just wanted to since everyone is talking about science, actually science, the word science has 2 meanings.
Please, please tell us what it is.
The first meaning is to study the material world through observation, experimentation, and make conclusions, And then the other meaning of science another meaning of science means any sort of knowledge,
Okay.
So I think my own feeling is that on both accounts, Prabhupada's use of science is correct.
Yes, very good. Yes. So
he was trying to explain it in the modern terminology, So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. So
that's just what I wanted to share.
No, thank you. So say that first meaning again of science: study, material observation. I'm just writing it down.
Study of the material world.
Yeah.
Through observation.
Okay, I got it.
Experiment.
Why don't you do this? Can you just write that in the chat? Can you just type that in the chat?
Okay, I will.
And we can have it there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Also interesting is one of the first books that Srila Prabhupada wrote is called Easy Journey to Other Planets. So he happened to write that at the time that America supposedly, quote unquote, went to the moon. So everyone was very this was Prabhupada wrote that. It was his first book he wrote, and he wrote it before he came to the West. Easy Journey to Other Planets. So that was on everyone's mind. Going to the moon, going to other planets. So he wrote this book, Easy Journey to Other Planets, to attract people's attention. And the book is all about the yogic path, which was practiced in Vedic times of yogis perfecting the art of leaving their body and going to different planetary atmospheres, etc. So that's Prabhupada's preaching. So we have to think like that as well today. How can we present Krishna consciousness in a way that's going to attract people of today? What catchwords can we use? What's the vogue? What's the in thing? How can we arouse their curiosity? Yeah. So yeah, thank you for that, Garimama. Any other questions or comments here? Let's have a look at the purples specifically. Now, Prabhupada speaks about attachment, fear, and anger. So someone can tell me, who does he explain? What is he explaining in regards to attachment? You can look in the purple there. These are one of the things at the end here. It's called anatta nivritti. There's a stage in spiritual life called anatta nivritti. So these are different anattas.
Who had cut the material attachment?
Sorry, Nitai Mata, say again.
Who has cut the material attachment? It's the qualities of the sadhu we are talking about, I think, there.
No, this is Prabhupada speaks specifically someone who's attached.
Materialistic people.
Yeah, basically it's material. I think that's correct, isn't it?
Oh,
They are attached to their own atheistic or their own atheistic ideas. I'm trying to find specifically.
And instead of choosing God, they choose some
People
kind of
who are attached
intoxication.
to the bodily conception of
Yes,
life.
thank you.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
that's because it's
Attachment. I think he says that too. At the end, he gives a summary of it. One has to get rid of all three stages of attachment to the material world. So he gives a summary of attachment. So
this is what I said. Like, he's quoting the devotion, next science of devotion service, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that one.
Yeah. The last class of men take to the shelter of some kind of intoxication, and their effective hallucinations are sometimes accepted as spiritual vision. Yes. So, and fear, interesting. What does Prabhupada say about fear in the purple? Fear of becoming persons again. That's a clue.
Murli Prabhu, you kind of breaking up sometimes a little bit.
Okay, it's breaking up. I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
The internet connection is not very good today.
Okay. I can hear everyone good. It must be at my end. You know,
It's very strange because
it's okay now. It's okay now.
Yeah, I've moved a bit closer to the microphone.
Yeah, that might help. Yeah.
So, Prabhupada referring to here fear. Basically, they cannot comprehend, so they consider the Supreme to be impersonal. And it describes it, the concept of retaining the personality after liberation frightens them. This is maybe one class of persons who they understand some aspect of transcendental knowledge, but they understand God to be impersonal. And the goal for them is to also lose their individuality. But when they hear that actual perfection means retaining one's personality, because they've been meditating on not being persons again or hoping to be, then that just cannot relate to it. Prabhupada says they become fearful interesting. I don't know if he's being a bit sarcastic as a word, perhaps not, but it says to become fearful of being persons again.
Is that because they know when they're gonna born again they will be not nice because they weren't nice?
Well, it
So
just
they're
means,
afraid.
well, it may be, but generally it may be if someone's embraced the philosophy of the impersonalism of Mayavadi, if they really embraced it and they haven't just innocently taken it up in innocence, but if they really embraced it and they've meditated upon it, then normally, I mean, as much as we are opposed to the personalist, we are opposed to the impersonalists, then the impersonalists are opposed to the personalists. So they have their own arguments to so-called defeat the Vaishnavas. And they study as much as we do. But they study with the idea of proving their impersonal siddhanta. So for them, if they really study Vaishnavism or they study the devotional path, which is very scientific, as Prabhupada quotes a verse here at the end, and it's very detailed, they start to becoming a little bit unnerved and they don't want to go there, and there's maybe one particular type of person. So fear. So we have to, I mean, there is a lot of devotees now who are practicing Krishna consciousness and they've come from this background. Yeah. But they've made the bold step of throwing this concept away and again pursuing spiritual life with the concept that they will always be persons. So to make advancement, what's being explained here, we have to be free of that. Attachment, as Mother Rajkishore said, to say the materialistic concept of life. Fear of becoming persons again. And anger. What does Prabhupada describe as anger in the purple? Hope you don't mind. This is a bit of a study class. This is a bit of a study class if you didn't know by now. Yes?
Anger is coming from lust.
No, but something Prabhupada, yes, we understand that. But Prabhupada doesn't quote that here in this purple. He describes anger. Why in this purple do people become angry?
Because of the contradictions, many theories.
Yes,
contradictions.
It's written here in Bhagavad Gita. Some of them want to merge into the supreme spiritual cause, and some of them disbelieve in everything, being angry at all sorts of spiritual speculation out of hopelessness.
Yes, that's it. They become nihilist. Nihilist means nothing. Everyone, nothing means nothing. No philosophy. It's all completely, everything has no meaning. So some people, for them, it becomes quite frustrating because there are so many philosophers and so many philosophies that it is quite easy to become completely bewildered and to give up, It can be, it's quite common, especially today, we might say, where we have the internet. I mean, when I was reading books on philosophy and having an interest in this type of thing, thank Krishna, there was no internet at that time, so I had to go to the library. Sounds like 200 years ago, doesn't it? I had to go to the library to find out something. I didn't. There was no such thing as Google. Wow, can we imagine a world without Google? Wow, there was such a world. So there, at least what I would try and understand. Still, there's lots of books in the library, etc., etc. So a lot of people, some people might not make it through and take up devotional life because even when they hear about Krishna consciousness, that may be just another philosophy, especially what's often an accusation which is coming from the atheists is that, oh yeah, you say, Christians say they're the only way and Muslims say they're the only way. And now you're saying you're the only way. So they become apathetic. Actually, I met someone the other day. I was walking from the temple, and one man was standing, a young colored man who was standing outside the shop waiting to begin his work. And he asked me, he thought I was a Buddhist. I explained him Hare Krishna. We believe in I said the difference between Buddhism and Hare Krishna is a personal God. And I explained, just like we call God Krishna because of his beautiful, attractive feature. God is also known as Allah. God is also known as Jehovah. And then he came out, then his true colors came out. He was a Christian of the born again type. And he started explaining, no, God is not Allah. God is Jehovah. And then we got into a bit of a discussion. Then at some point I realized where it was going. I said, do you have any, he said, the Bible is the only word of God. So I said, don't believe there's divinity in any other writing, in any other religious system? He said, no. At that point, he said, okay, thank you, goodbye. No point in discussion. So there's to become absorbed, Prabhupada says, the word used, Krishna uses, fully absorbed. We have to become free of a lot of misconceptions. And only then can we can fully absorb ourselves. That's why Krishna also says for the doubting soul, there's more than one place he explains, Ashada das Purusha Chatanaha. Yeah. Unless one has faith in this path, one will return to the path of birth and death. I'm going on a bit here. Let's open any more questions or comments on this. All right. Yes.
I just wanted to, I was thinking, all these impersonalists, everybody, all are in their own journey towards Krishna, but they are just going round and round instead of coming directly. This is all their deeds. Can we say?
That's described in the next verse, which is Yeyatamam papajante tamtabai pajamiham. Yeah. As all surrender unto me, I award them. Accordingly, everyone follows my path in all respects. So, for instance, as you mentioned, the impersonalist, or those, but these are specifically to those who have some worship of Krishna, do some bhajan of Krishna, but their goal is not devotion. Yeah. So Krishna will award them accordingly. So I was reading anyway, we're going on to the next next verse, so I won't comment too much on that. Let's see if we get there today. Yeah. Any other questions or comments on? It's quite we could explain a bit if you like on this verses at the end that describes the different stages of devotional service, but I think Prabhupada has explained it.
Yeah, also,
Sorry?
I was thinking about this slow process, where it's saying that in the prema stage, there is constant engagement in transcendental loving says, but this process is slow, devotional service is slow. How can one make it like quicker to get back to that, to get to the point of prema, or climb up the stages?
Yeah, well, I think there's one answer that we could give this. One answer we could give is that to the degree, as Krishna explains, as all surrender unto me, it explains, I award them accordingly. So that's one thing. Another one is how much attention that we do give the process. For instance, the process of chanting. Yeah, that's another factor of how much we're paying attention when we're chanting the Lord's holy name. Another factor is how much hearing and chanting we're doing. Yeah. Another factor, how much we're engaged in actual loving devotional service. That's another factor. So according to the many prescribed details that that's given in devotional service, to that degree that we follow that, then now of course it may not be as quick as we would like, and that's also part of the transcendental path that we follow, is that we cannot control Krishna. Even as one purport where Prabhupada describes in the first canto, I think, that even by the mechanical process of hearing and chanting doesn't mean we can obtain Krishna's mercy. Everything at the end of the day is down to Krishna's grace, depending on our attitude. Like, for instance, if we calculate, okay, I'm going to read Bhagavatam every day for 1 hour, then in 2 years' time, I shall probably reach a Shakti. Another year after that, I'll reach Bhava. And in 4 years from now, I should be at Prema. Because I'm going to read the whole Bhagavatam in that amount of time.
And also,
means, I've just finished, that means like, you cannot calculate it materially. But just have faith that Krishna's a person, he's seeing our efforts, and he's very, very kind. And he's going to reward us accordingly. So let's see how much more we can pay attention, how much more we can hear and chant about Krishna, and just have faith in Krishna's benevolence. Yes, Madhu Mangapu, sorry, I cut you off there.
No, don't worry. I was thinking that each one of us, we have certain purpose and certain job to perform. So that's why we are not, Krishna will not give us, let's say, it give us to everyone the same, the mercy. But some of us, we have certain lessons to learn. So then he will not want to give you too much. Like, he's like a game, let's say, which you need to surrender.
Yes.
Like a sculpture, like a sculpture, if I can call it like this.
Yeah, actually, I've got one picture. Perhaps I'll bring it up for tomorrow on that point about sculpturing oneself. Anyway, but yes, that's a very important point. So for some, mercy may come in having to go through the results of material attachment. And that's part of the process of purification. It's Krishna's mercy. Say, for example, at some point in one's life, one has become inspired by Krishna. And with a heartfelt desire, they pray to Krishna to become a devotee of Krishna. Okay, 1 year down the line, 2 years or a few months or 3 years down the line, they again become attached to what they was attached to before, even though having made this vow or made this made this determination, and even though they know it's the wrong thing to do, they may do the wrong thing because of perhaps sensual weakness or weakness of heart. So Krishna will arrange things in such a way that you're going to have to become frustrated before you're going to give up this attachment. You want to say that's Krishna's mercy as well. It comes in that form. You know, Prabhupada often quotes in his humility, Prabhupada quotes the verse Tat Sanam Shanai from the Bhagavatam. Anyone know what verse I'm going to paraphrase now? It's if Krishna is especially merciful, and you know what's coming next?
He takes everything away.
Yeah, he takes everything away. So
he takes everything away.
Yeah, now just to give you reassurance that he generally doesn't do that to everyone. So like, don't worry, you're going to keep your house, you're going to keep your situation. But for some, he does. Yeah, and that's called an extra special dealing of Krishna. So Prabhupada spoke of himself in that regard. Out of his humility, Prabhupada speaks that his spiritual master many times came to him in a dream and told him to follow him and to take sannyas. Prabhupada explained, I was listening just recently when he was explaining on Appearance Day of Bhaktisiddhanta, how when that dream came to him, Prabhupada was horrified. I can't take sannyas. He was horrified by he was horrified by it. He was kind of a young man. He was married. He had children. And now Bhaktisiddhanta wants me to take sannyas. Prabhupada used those words. I was horrified. And not just once, Prabhupada said. Bhaktisiddhanta came to him many times. But Prabhupada speaks in his humility. Of course, we understand it was the transcendental arrangement of Krishna. But Prabhupada says he had all these because of his attachment. His idea that he would make lots of money for Krishna from his business, and he would give that for spreading Krishna consciousness. Krishna had different ideas. And if you read Prabhupada's Leelamrita, you can watch the unfolding of Prabhupada's plans in life and the unfolding of Krishna's plan for him, where he took everything away from Prabhupada, literally everything. Family, wealth, everything, and left him with no other path to follow. So anyway, we're going around a bit about this point, which Mother Mongol brought up. But yeah, on Mother Chandravali's point, how can we make advancement fast? So for some, they may have to go through, they may have to take the wrong turns in the maze. Has anyone been to a maze before?
Yeah.
Been to a maze, and the hedges are like 8 foot, and sometimes in order to get to the right place you have to take the wrong turning, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then you turn around. So sometimes it's like that. For some of us it may be like that, but that's Krishna's mercy. Like now you've lived through that material desire. God, you're sick of it, you don't want to go there again. Krishna's rubbed your face in it as such. And you have realization of how much suffering there is in that material pursuit. And that's Krishna's mercy. That's Krishna's grace, because you've given yourself to him and he's watching you.
Yeah, I was also thinking that to get Krishna's mercy, one has to understand what Krishna is asking you to do. Like is it chapter 12, where he's always saying, Same Priya, who's dear to him.
Yeah, that's it, chapter 12. Yeah, very wonderful. Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, so we have to understand what Krishna is asking from us, and we have to surrender to that. Like when materially, when somebody is dear to us, we try and buy things, cook things that pleases them. And this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we have to try and understand what pleases him. And what really pleases Krishna is by us being kind to devotees, us being kind to living entities, understanding how to treat them, how to speak to them, all the Vaishnava etiquette, how to follow Vaishnava etiquettes,
Yeah, that's
not to hurt anybody, not to say, Yeah,
that's a very wonderful.
If somebody's done anything wrong to you, try and understand better philosophy in there and try and act in a proper way. You should act properly.
Yeah. Thank you, Chandra. Actually, let's just read those verses. Let's read a couple of these verses that Mother Chandravali is referring to. So if you want to look, you can. It's chapter 12.
Chapter 12, yeah.
Text 13, 14. So how to please Krishna. One who is not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor, and is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in devotional service with determination, mind and intelligence fixed on me. Such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. Okay, that's just the first 2 verses. So there's lots to work on there. Next one. He by whom no one is put into difficulty and who is not disturbed by anyone, who is equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety, is very dear to me. All right. So, for example, you may be in a situation which is very disturbing. It may be someone has disturbed you, a person has disturbed you. Now you have a choice of how you're going to react to that. Now, if you want to be dear to Krishna, what is Krishna asking you to do? He's asking you to not be disturbed.
Yeah, be
He's
tolerant.
actually asking you to be equipoised, to be tolerant. So if you take that, if you follow that, then you'll feel a lot of happiness, you'll feel a lot of peace of mind, and you'll please Krishna. Very good point that Chandravali Mother's brought up here. And then it goes on. There's others there. Let's read one more, so I can't resist. All the verses are nice, but here. One who neither rejoices nor grieves, nor laments nor desires, and who renounces both auspicious and inauspicious things, such a devotee is very dear to me. Now, it's to be understood, Shashti Bhakti Bhagavati Kinchanaye, that actually, by becoming a devotee of Krishna and following the science, this word we've used today, of Krishna consciousness, these devotees, these qualities will manifest. But they will manifest at the stage of pure devotion. So in order for us to follow the path and to please Krishna, we have to what's called prime the pump. We have to actively develop these qualities. We shouldn't be impervious to developing these qualities, thinking, oh, don't worry, it's all going to come. No, we have to be conscious of them. We have to be conscious of what it means, of how to act, as Mother Chandravali is saying, how to act in this world, and how to act in such a way that is pleasing to Krishna. Yeah, so it's good for us to read through these. It's from text, chapter 12. We didn't read all of them because we won't have time. From text, I did learn these verses at one time. They're very nice. From text 13 of chapter 12 all the way to the end. Chapter 12 is the smallest chapter in Bhagavad Gita. That's why I endeavored to learn it.
I like it because it's teaching me when Krishna is saying Samay Priya. So I want to understand what pleases Krishna.
Yeah.
So I try and work with that.
Yeah, very good point. Yes, Nitai Mata.
To ask you about this sentence in this purport, just before the sanctuary sloka from the Nectar of Devotion. It says this last stage of the devotional life is called Bhava.
Yeah.
Or transcendental love of Godhead. So, but
sorry. Last stage is prema.
Yeah, but anyway, let's finish. Yeah, anyway, it says here, let's go from what Prabhupada has written here. Yeah. Carry on, Nitai Mata.
Yeah, so all the transcendental love of Godhead. Can you elaborate on that, Prabhu? Because it's a preliminary stage is which is matured in Bhava. So it's basically prema is a matured Bhava state.
Now, because Bhava is prema.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit of prema. It's the seed of prema.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last stage of devotional life is called bhava.
Yeah.
So full bhava is called prema. So like when the bhava matures, then it's prema. So it's still bhava. So that's why Prabhupada, the last stage of devotional life is called bhava, or transcendental love of Godhead. So Prabhupada is referring to that is prema su amsu samyubhak, that bhava is a ray of love of God. So love of God is the full manifestation of bhava. All right? Which is also known as prema. Bhava can be used in a lot of different contexts. So, but anyway, very nice, very well done. You from our studies elsewhere, then you noted that last stage of devotional life is called bhava, or transcendental love of God. So we can presume Prabhupada there is referring to the full manifestation of bhava.
Bhava, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Time has just flown away very fast. It's already 7 o'clock. But well, let's go on to another verse tomorrow. Then tomorrow's verse is a very nice verse, very important verse. So let's save it up for tomorrow, shall we? So thank you for everyone who joined us. We had 17 devotees who joined us today. Hope this was of interest, and I hope you found it good to take part or to listen to. Thank you for joining us. And please join us tomorrow at the same time, and we'll continue our wonderful discussion of Bhagavad Gita.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Bhagavad Gita.
Praise Holy Prabhu ki. Thank you for the lovely.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank
Hare
you
Krishna,
all.
Krishna
Thank
Krishna,
you.
Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram,
Hare
Ram
Hare.
Ram, Hare Hare.
Ram Hare.
Hare Krishna.